So we're going to be continuing with the interview conversation, and we're going to be looking at it from a framework of receptive and generative.
And so receptive, our reflective meditation really leads into a more receptive practice, which is really quite different from really most instructions in meditation and in life, actually. So what do we mean by receptive? Well, of course, we probably went to a dictionary definition in part, but willingness to consider or accept new suggestions or ideas, able to or willing to receive something, especially signals or stimuli. In our words, language, feministic.
Right. So being able to take things in, having less of that kind of boundary up, or less, of a strong substance that our thoughts and feelings and experience has to get through. We're more willing to let them come in and be filtered in a gentler, more easy and open way.
And open, that's a really important word in this. Perhaps if there's only one word we take up about receptive, open could perhaps be that word. But of course, in a receptive listening to this, you take up whatever words hit you. Impact you.
Right. We try to give optional words, and that's part of being open, right? Isn't it? Is giving more suggestions, more opportunities for people to resonate with different parts of the way our practice works.
Right. And we could come back to that in the interview, because that's often what we do in an interview is we might even give sort of like a multiple choice suggestion rather than saying this is that. We say, oh, it could be this, it could be that, maybe that, which really allows you to tune into your own experience.
Which is a distinction, and that's really what we're trying to make are some distinctions of a receptive practice versus a more generative or strongly intentional or focused practice. Because we're not saying one is better than the other, though we do lean receptive, and we found that different things develop from a receptive practice. But these generative practices, they're really provide security and stability and some steadiness in practice. They're needed.
Right, and certainly needed at times of insecurity when things are really chaotic or kind of rocking, or something like that. And an example of this could be how to develop friendliness or metta in your in meditation and in life, rather than saying repeat these specific words, even though to develop this, and if you repeat them often and over again, it will develop that we're like interviewing you about when it's there in your meditation.
Right, and it takes a different kind of effort to be receptive and to see where friendliness shows up or pops up unexpectedly or maybe with a gentle intention, rather than trying to put the effort into staying with a phrase and repeat it and not leave that phrase to other things.
Right. So back to the interview, which really is our topic these days. So that point really we're getting to is that in the interview in a more generative instructions is different. It's different than the way we will tend to interview you or have a conversation about your meditation. And in my experience, the interview in more generative practices stay pretty close to how is it going with the instruction.
Right. And we stay close to that too, in some respects, because our instruction is to be gentle and kind with whatever comes up, right?
Good point.
So, but if the instruction is to follow the breath and you're really staying on that. The interview is going to be more about how did that work for you? How did it go? Your success and failure around that, and what comes from when you stay on the breath. Ours is going to be more all over the place because we don't know what actually came up in your meditation until you talk about it. So we're both kind of entering a space which is more unknown.
Right. And that's kind of the fun of it, in my mind, but I think that's also the challenge of it. It actually is easier to follow the known, to follow a well, if we think about spiritual development as a path, to follow that well-known path that you hiked many times before or walked many times before.
Yeah, I think that's not just human wiring, it's cultural. We've been brought up that way, to find the known and stay with it, and then just try to do it better and develop in a kind of, again, somewhat linear, like we could be in a linear progression with our internal worlds. And sometimes that happens. That's the thing. Sometimes it does seem very much like this led to that. And when I worked on this came from that. But we're kind of pointing to, well, did it really come just from that or other things? And what else was there with it? We're really doing that expansive direction.
And when you said hardwired, I thought you were going to go somewhere else because that's where my mind went, of course, which is it's as animals, I think it's instinctual too. Animals follow the known, except for I can't resist bringing my cat in. I can't help it. But every once in a while she does something completely different. Like, why did that habit change? Like, I don't understand that well. Um, the point being, the point being, maybe we're hardwired for a mixture of them to follow some known paths and also to try new things.
I mean, we named it as a dialectic in our book, where we talked about these are two extremes. If you stay at one or the other, you're not going to really get an understanding of how they conjoin and twist and interplay and come to some middle ground with them.
Yeah. And so interview talking about, more generative or intentional practices, that would be another way of calling it, naming it rather. We're going to we might ask you questions about it. So, we just trying to see, like, how did they come up? Did they come up in receptively, or did you decide to generate them? Some people always start their meditation with a certain familiar practice. That's very common. And so at that point, I really interview about how did they function? Did you get calmer? How long did you do this for? Did it come and go? So we will ask you questions, and don't think we're judging you when we do that. We really are just trying to get you more aware of how they function, because you don't notice that so much when it's just what you're doing.
Right. Right. Well, and there's sometimes a fear that if you get questioned about something, you're going to lose it or we're going to take it away from you. Like you're not allowed to do that anymore. And truthfully, when you do question something that you do automatically, it does change it. So I can't even say we would, we wouldn't change it by talking about it. There's something that will change a little bit by looking at it different. Your awareness will be different about something that you do habitually, especially if it's starting the sitting this way all the time.
That makes me just go right to a Dharma point. We are in a way right then and there interviewing to reveal or become more aware of anicca, that things change, that these habits too change, that it is not always this way.
Right.
And our questioning might be, an elixir for a bit of change.
Yeah. That might be a good place to end.
Yep, I think so, time-wise and topic-wise.